Good morning, everybody. We are going to have two streams today. We're going to start the morning off with a live press conference by Children's Health Defense and Werner Mendenhall. Um, I'm not quite sure how long that's going to take. It looks like countdown timer says about 20 minutes. It's going to start. Uh, Following that, I will be closing this stream down and I'll start a new one where we will replay the day one. As most of you know, I didn't even start my channel until day two of the trial, so it was not captured on my channel, and many of you didn't get to see Warner Mendel's amazing opening statement. Um, it brought him to tears. One of the most impactful opening statements he's ever heard, which I think says a lot considering who Barnes is. So um, we'll have this going in just a few minutes, and then we can talk about what actually happened. Um, I'm pretty upset by the whole thing, as most of you know. Some of you might have read my post in Locals or on X. I'm not really happy with the situation, but we'll get into that a little bit later today. In the meantime, we're just going to kind of give it a few minutes and see what Werner and Hall's team have to say. And I appreciate you guys all hanging out, watching this all with me, and uh, getting as invested as I have in this. It's been let's call it an interesting journey the last couple of weeks. Never expected to be a streamer either, but here we go. I'm not quite sure what our timing is going to be. It says scheduled for 9:30. Countdown timer was just at 17 minutes, and it just went to 27 minutes. So maybe that they're going to delay it. Maybe there's an error in how this counting works. Uh, One thing that I have noticed over the last 2 weeks that every time the timer came to an end. So I do expect this to start sometime in the next 15, 20 minutes. I appreciate everybody being patient. Let's see what the uh, Children's Health Defense have to say about this. Uh, Very interested to see the path they take. I know a lot of us who are watching this heard Barnes last night and talk about potential for appeal. We'll talk a little bit more about that after they make their official statement today. Once that has been completed, I will air the day one replay simply because I started my channel on day two of this trial. So we didn't get to capture that, and some of you didn't get the chance to see Werner Mendenhall's amazing opening statement. So we will air that after this. So we'll have something to watch today if you want to watch something. And at the very least, I would highly recommend watching the early part of the stream, which is Werner Mendenhall's opening statements. Then it Grace Grace's mother, Cindy, will also testify today as well. So we'll see how this goes, and see you in a few minutes. And the timer has reset yet again. Now we're at 52 minutes. So I'm a bit confused as to when this press conference might actually start. It might start in the next 13 minutes. It might be in an hour. Not quite sure. I'll be sitting here waiting with you guys as well. For those of you just joining us, the timer keeps changing for the start time of this. It is scheduled for 9:30 Eastern time, which is in 13 minutes from now. But the timer, the countdown timer on the center of the video, has changed multiple times since I've been watching it. I don't know if they're going to be on time or not, or if that timer simply isn't working. So I appreciate everybody being patient, and let's see what Warner Mendenhall and Children's Health Defense have to say. Really appreciate everybody watching and following. Some very kind words from the comments, saying they appreciate what I'm doing here. Can't say I've done much other than make this available for you guys. So I appreciate the kind words, and we'll keep doing this. like update the scheduled time on the stream, and it looks like it'll now be at 10 a.m. Eastern time. So I'm not quite sure what the actual time of this thing will be. I'm just going to be ready and waiting for when they actually start. To answer your question, has this started or is it 10 a.m. Eastern? It was originally scheduled for 9 and then 9:30, and then it looks like it's changed to 10, and now it looks like it's 10 after 10. So not quite sure when this is actually going to start. Based on every other stream that they have done so far throughout this trial, they've started before the actual scheduled start time. So I'm assuming that Children's Health Defense works on ish time, just like Mr. Barnes does. So I guess we'll find out pretty soon. I don't know if you've noticed, but the time has changed yet again. So instead of 10 after, it now says quarter after. Yet again, I have no idea what the actual start time of this thing is. So I appreciate everybody being patient. We'll see what Children's Health Defense has to say. Looks like they've changed the time again, going from 15 after to 10 after. I don't think they understand or know when they're going to go live. So I guess we're all just kind of waiting and seeing what's going to happen. I appreciate everybody being patient. And for those of you just joining us now, if you didn't catch what happened last night, long story short, the hospital and the doctors won, and the Schara family lost on all counts. Pretty upsetting for everything. And Barnes, in one of his late night bourbon with Barnes streams, was talking about plans for potential appeal on a couple different grounds. I'm assuming that is going to be what is discussed in the press conference coming up here in just a few minutes. So we'll follow up the press conference here with a little bit of short discussion about this, and then I will be ending this stream, and then I will start a new stream, which will be a restream of day one to show Werner Mendenhall's opening statement. As some of you know, I didn't even start this channel until day 2 of the trial. So looks like they've taken the timer off the screen. I'm assuming that this is about to start any minute now. Looks like a few people didn't get to see last night. Grace lost. There is absolutely a loss here. It's not. It was the verdict came back last night. The case is officially over.
Okay, it's a little after 9 o'clock. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to start with some opening comments. Then we'll go to Cindy, Jess, Attorney Joe Voiland, and then Attorney Werner Mendenhall, and then questions. All right? So first, in honor of Grace, what would she say if she was here right now? She would say, God did it, Dad. And boy, did he ever. And in that light, I want to thank Kyle from the New American and CHD TV for live streaming the entire trial. For those with ears to hear, they saw for the first time what's behind the curtain. and it was fantastic to be part of it. I cannot believe God chose to use our family to evil. Then second, I want to thank the two attorneys who are not here. Attorney John Fleiter. We would not be here without John. John and I worked side by side for literally over 1,000 hours putting this together for trial. I know John's watching this right now over live stream, and he's sitting with his wife, Erin, who he hasn't seen for 3 weeks, and his little best buddy, Jack, is probably on his lap right now. So I want to thank John. He has his own firm, the Flight Firster. Yesterday, we utilized his leadership in order to see the vision that we needed to do to be able to get this in front of a jury. All right. Now, a few things that I want to say publicly before. First of all, people wonder, are you disappointed? Well, I'm human, so of course I'm disappointed, but I also know that God's ways are not our ways. And so there's no reason to be disappointed once you see he has a bigger purpose. Beginning. And he opened this door. Our responsibility was to walk through the door, and after the fact, after the verdict is in, oh, that was God's will. How do we know? Because God is sovereign. So after the event, if you've left it all on the battlefield, you know it was his will. And so we submit to that. We know he has bigger purpose in mind with Grace's story and Grace's case. And I don't know what that looks like yet, but we're going to find out. We're all going to find out together, which will be, it's exciting. I've said many times that our family's been called under Genesis 50:20, which says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good, the saving of many lives, which is happening today. And Grace's death has saved countless lives, and it's going to keep saving lives, both physically. And then last, regarding God's plan, when Jesus was on the cross, he said, forgive them, Father, for they do not know what they're doing. And these people in the courtroom, the defense attorneys, Holly McGinnis, Gavin Shokar, they are not our enemy. Satan is our enemy. And so we do forgive them for what they did. Our hope is that they repent, because then we think about them. So we were up against the system, right? Not just the medical industrial complex, but the legal industrial complex. So why do I say that? I'm just going to take you into the minutia for a bit. People say, well, how did you even get involved? Well, I knew what we were getting into before we got into it. So it sounds stupid, I know. When I tell you what I'm going to tell you, well, here it is. So here's what's going on in the state legislatures, and I'm going to tell you specifically about Wisconsin. So in Wisconsin, there's a $750,000 cap on medical malpractice claims. So what our hope for in this trial was that we would get what's called an excessive verdict. So for example, if the jury awarded us $5 million for argument's sake, the judge would have had to tell the jury, not ahead of time, because that's by agreement, they could not know of the statutory cap. He would have to tell the jury, we can only award the family $750,000. And the hope was to take this case to the state Supreme Court to remove the caps. So that would have been an opportunity. It's foregone now, but that was the opportunity that we were hopeful for. So the $750,000 cap makes it virtually impossible to file a lawsuit in Wisconsin. Why? Because a case like this takes just over $1 million to bring. So wrap your head around that. And if you can find an attorney that would take the case on without you paying for it, the state statute says the maximum they can get is $250,000. That's the minimum. If you win, the max they can be paid is $250,000. Then to add fuel to that foolishness, The state statute requires the medical industrial establishment to have insurance. So how did they pay for their case? Insurance. We had to pay for our case. The insurance companies paid for their case. Then one more knife that they have in the state statute, specifically applying to Grace. Grace was a legal adult. Grace was 19 years old. If you are a legal adult in Wisconsin without a husband and without children, there's no claim for loss of companionship. So Grace, as you know, was my best buddy. Anybody that met her, she was their best buddy. But by statute, there's no loss of companionship for somebody like Grace. You can't make this stuff up. So anyway, we up against this Antichrist legal system. We did it because of God's calling. And I'm going to turn this now over to Cindy and then Jess. I do want to just tell you one thing regarding Grace before I close, though. You know, we heard a lot of testimony in the trial about visitation policies, right? So I'm just picturing Grace in the courtroom, because she had such the sense of humor, right? So, you know, I picture her in the courtroom saying, "Dad, I don't get it. Why are they making such a big deal about visitation policy? Don't allow visitors." You know, so that was Grace. All right, Cindy, you're up.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Again, I'm so grateful. We are all so grateful that you are standing with us and fighting the huge David and Goliath fight that we've been in. This morning, you know, having one day to process what took place yesterday in the courtroom, it's heartbreaking, for one. We're going to be honest, because we really did expect he was a valuable person in this world, just like we all are. But special needs people have a extra loving, caring heart for this world. And this jury, deliberating as quickly as they did and coming up with their verdict, did not give Grace the respect that she deserved. And I heard that from another person that's in the audience today, and I was so grateful that she shared that, because it did just touch my heart, thinking that is very true. They did not give her the respect that she deserved to sit down and think through those questions and process what that nurse and the doctor and the rest of those nurses and doctors did to her in that hospital. Grace died as a result of end-of-life meds. Prior to that, there was a lot of horrific stuff that happened. The 2 events that she had where the Precedex ended up having a terrible effect on her body. And yet they did not tell us, the family. And yet Grace is the one that suffered that. And as that jury took papers in the back to process what it was that they needed to decide on, they didn't even take the time to process as we think about. I think the judge took longer to go through the instructions than they actually deliberate in the back. And that was heartbreaking. And I kept thinking about Grace last night because of the fact that they missed out on one special girl. And they missed out seeing what they did to that special girl. None of us would have survived that concoction that concoction that they gave her at the end, because those are end-of-life meds. Morphine is given to people in hospice. As I looked and researched, it is a medication that softens death. And that's exactly what they intended to do. They were not helping Grace. Dr. Shokar was not doing that. Holly McGinnis was not doing that. And they knew that. As a 20-year ICU nurse and a doctor that already had 6 years, plus he studied his medical, or had his medical experience in Canada, which is a very strong euthanization area. I know for sure that they knew what they were doing, and I feel that deep in my heart. And God knows, God has seen it, and as God said, we are trusting that God has this play out the way that He had known it was going to play out. But I'm sure that as we sit here today, we question, and I'm human, and I'm questioning to God, why did it have to play out like this? But he's got a bigger plan. And that is very true. And we have to hold on to that. We are minority. And God says that the path is narrow and few will find it. We are hoping that more will find it. And through Grace's death, that is really a true wish that we do hope for. She has given her life to save others. And as Scott pointed out, she has done that. And so we're just going to keep walking with him and holding on to the memory we have of Grace and our son Travis. And he too, we believe, lost his life due to medications because of a medication that he got put on just 30 days prior to his death that interacted with another medication. So we see this so deeply now. And as the defense tried to play out yesterday that we knew all this stuff about ventilators and different things with Grace, we did not know what we know now today. I mean, once we lost Grace, Scott went on a huge search. Once that one nurse told me when we walked out, that she and other nurses didn't believe Grace should have died tonight. I mean, those were things that were, I believe, seeds from the Lord to help us look further, and that's exactly what we did. We started to look further, and we found such numerous things. In a area up in Chippewa Falls, it's a vent clinic where people have been and put a tracheostomies in. They are still testing for COVID. They are still masking. They are they're a Medicare, Medicaid facility. But yet, I don't believe there's a lot of people that are awake to it. And they're claiming there's another wave of COVID coming. And we just need to be strong and not be pulled into the traps. We know that Satan is laying those traps, but we have to be the voices for the Lord and for everybody else, and help them see that this is truly part of Satan's the right direction, and we just need to hold on to that. So in that, I just want to say our daughter Grace, the biggest gift that she was to all of us, we are so grateful to know that we will see her again. This is just a temporary separation. And until he comes or calls us home, we're going to do what we can on this earth. As tough as it is without him, we are going to just press on. Thank you guys all again, just for being there, for praying, for knowing that and believe, because what happened to Grace happened to over 1 million people. They were injected with end-of-life meds. They were put on medications that were causing their given to people that were shutting kidneys down, and that were being given to these hospitals during that time, and it's going to happen again. I mean, they're prepping. There's some hints around that they're prepping for another big wave. Just know, that we have to be sky.
I'm going to try to get through this without completely losing it. I first want to start was saying, she saved my son. We have come to know the Lord more than anything. I never would have asked her to do that, but she saved me in her death. So I want to start with that, and I also want to start with that we are crushed. I can't explain the feelings we feel, but we are not defeated. This is only the beginning. And I have been trusting God through this entire process, and I will continue to do that, as hard as it is. Don't know what his plans are, but I will continue to trust him. I read through something that a friend of ours wrote prior to the verdict yesterday, and it pulled at my heart. It was bittersweet, and I want to share it with you because it reached me. and I hope it reaches you. So it was written yesterday by our friend Scott prior to the verdict, and he's writing it in Grace's eyes. To the jury of 12 from a daughter in heaven, my name is Grace. I'm 19 years old, and I was born with Down syndrome. I love to laugh, sing, and hold my dad's hand when we prayed. I believe in Jesus with all my heart, and now I know I'm with him. I see beauty here. I feel peace. That something is justice. I didn't ask for a DNR to be placed on evidence. I had an acting power of attorney, my family. They were supposed to be the voice for me when I couldn't speak for myself. But someone else made a decision to stop trying to save me. A decision that was never discussed with my family. A DNR was waiting for someone to help me, but no one did. My earthly dad, as I always called him, and Mom and Jess still wake up at night with those last moments echoing in their heart. They trusted that doctors would listen, that the power of attorney meant something, that their daughter and sister would be given every chance to live. Things now that I couldn't before. I see the whole picture, but that doesn't make what happened right. Because I have the right to silence the voices let low. Each of you on the jury, you have been given a powerful role, not just to determine facts, but to weigh what is morally just. My family's pain is real. Their grief is deep. But what they seek is not revenge, it's truth, accountability, a promise that no other family will have to watch their child die while being kept in the dark. Please help my dad, my mom, my sister find peace. Let this be the start of healing for my family. Let my story mean something. When I read that, it broke my heart, but it meant something, and I hope it reaches to you guys and anyone listening. I feel like my sister wasn't even given an opportunity. It seems so odd how the jury came back so fast. And that, I think, is what hurts the most. So, like I said earlier, we are crushed, we are shattered, but we are not defeated, and we will continue on. And we know that we will see Grace and our brother Travis someday. And I hold on to that thought of them in heaven together. Thank you.
Wayland comes up, I want to say a couple things. One is, I don't think anybody missed it at the trial that Dr. Burdine was not paid. So these experts get anywhere from 20 to 50,000, some of them more, as you found out. And all the money paid for Dr. Burdine's time, he has to turn over to the university. And when he was going through the records, his billing rate for going through records was $350. Even with the university getting the money, he limited the time to 1 hour a day for 8-hour days. So he would only bill $350 and tout him in the open because he's here. That's Joe Voiland. We could also not be here without Joe Voiland. He's a Wisconsin attorney. He came out of retirement to do this case. So I know he's a young guy, but he came out of retirement to do this case. And because of the importance of the case, grasp somebody doing this, but he came to me before we started the trial. And we had a lot of time with motions before the trial. And he decided to write off his time at 50% going into the trial. And then he didn't charge one penny for the trial. So that's the man you're going to hear from next.
After the verdict last night, I didn't have a lot to say, and didn't really. I don't say a lot if I don't have to, but I sent Scott a text, and he actually here this morning, which was, "My ways are not your ways, and my words are not yours," and that's from Isaiah 55. And you can't hear me. The mic, I have to get closer. Okay. After the trial last night, I didn't have a lot to say. I sent Scott one text message, and it was in quotes. And Scott quoted it this morning, so it was Scott quoting Isaiah. Who was quoting?
Okay, Warner Mendenhall is going to be next, and I'm going to take you back to December of 2002. We filed the lawsuit in April of 2023. Cindy and I drove to Warner's office in December of 22, and we sat down with him, and Warner said, "Hey, this is a no-brainer. You have a 200% chance of winning." No, he did not do that, but he already knew I was outspoken. Yeah, attorneys don't want their clients out sharing what's going on with the trial, and I told him, if we're going to do this, I'm not going to stop speaking out. And so we agreed, and he said, he did seriously say, "Whatever you screw up in the press, we'll fix it." All right, so now Attorney Warner Mendenhall is the one who chose to accept this case, and then he put the team together.
Yeah, and really, what a team it has been. And Scott, I don't even know how many thousands and thousands of hours Scott put into the case. And his effort on his behalf, on behalf of the family, on behalf of his daughter Grace. Am I a little close? Okay, there we go. I'm sorry. Look, when Scott came to see me in the dark of night, you guys drove down from Wisconsin to see me at the office. It was dark outside. And honestly, Scott had some confusion. He's like, "Why won't an attorney look at my case?" And honestly, we started talking about caps. We also started about the problem of the COVID blindness that's out there, and that we were going into an environment where people did not want to see the truth at all. And at that time, I don't know. I mean, we may work hard for these years and get this to trial, but on day one, we actually, I do on day one for this case. You have a case. By the time we got to trial, I think that the world had turned, and I think that we did have a chance at trial, and we worked as hard as we could to get a win for the family and for Grace. But despite that, I think we completely lifted the COVID veil. We haven't completely lifted the veil of fear, and we have a long way to do that. And I'll tell you what I have seen in this process, the entire COVID process, is that fear has been used against us. It's been used to destroy our good nature. It's been used to destroy our relationships. I think that's one of the core issues here and revealed by this in the United States. When you go into a hospital now, this trial shows you sign your rights away. Do not experts come on and say that, no, we didn't have them come on. I'm sorry, the defense had them come on and say, oh, they can make the decision because of something called futility. So I think that this trial is incredible in the sense that it paints a very accurate picture of what has happened in healthcare. And it creates a roadmap of what people face when they go into healthcare. What are you signing off on? You are kept in the dark. You're kept into the dark about your information. You're kept in the dark about your kept in the dark about your treatment. You're kept in the dark about the risks versus benefits. All of that you're kept in the dark of. This family did not know, despite asking, what drugs Grace was on, what drugs they were giving her, what drugs caused her to have 3 overdoses in less than a week. They weren't even told of the overdoses. They were saving her right in front of Scott. Didn't tell him we have a life-threatening situation on our hands. So I just think that this case opens a crack in the system, lifts the veil on healthcare, and I really think that, and I'm very, very hopeful that people understand this deterioration of where we stand as people in all institutions, but especially in healthcare. We are not being treated in a human way. Protocols are being overlaid in terms of the treatment. Protocols are taking away the doctor-patient relationship. Protocols have destroyed what used to be the art of medicine, and now it's the protocols of medicine. That's it. So it has been absolutely an honor and to represent this family in court, and our team of lawyers that came together, our ragtag team. It was just amazing to see everybody in every way they could. Legal minds, we've argued back here in these rooms, battery issues, consent issues, all of the legal issues around healthcare have been argued in that dining room, around that dining room table. And in the opening statement, and the family part of that all the way through. So I really couldn't have asked for better clients or better legal partners on this. It's just been amazing. And there's so many other support staff out there that have helped volunteered their time to help move this case along the way. So Andy Barnhart, who wasn't on our original team, we got him pro-hocked in just to battery because he'd spent 2 weeks arguing about, thinking about battery, writing about battery. And we're like, let's see if the judge will let you argue this. So Andy came in and did a great job arguing that case. So anyway, it's been one of the greatest experiences of my life. We'll let that pass. It's been one of the greatest experiences of my life and one of the greatest honors that I've had to represent this family over the last 3 weeks in this trial. So I appreciate it.
Okay, we'll take questions at this time.
So you say this is just the beginning. What's the next step now?
The next step is to sleep for one day and then to figure out what God has in mind next. I've had a whole slew of interview requests, so I know next week is going to be back-to-back interviews, but then, we've got to see what happens next. I'm not sure right now. This door has been closed, but when God closes one door, he always opens another. So I just don't know right now. Great question. Joe says he'll be in Florida tonight. Go ahead.
At the beginning of this whole case, I was very concerned about some of the statements that have been made early on in medical records, where she was kind of called out, Grace was called out for being unvax and Christian and so forth, as if there could be a potential of some kind of bias going on here. Were you not, if I understand correctly, you were not allowed to raise those issues. For me, listening to the remarks made to the jury, I don't feel like given a chance to put together the story of why these why this mistreatment would happen, why they would have this kind of harsh attitude toward her. That maybe perhaps could have helped if you're not allowed to share that.
Fantastic question. So I'm going to repeat his question so everybody can hear it. And I'll comment first, then I'm going to have Warner comment on it second. So the question is, what about the biases in the record? There was bias in the record for us being Christian. There was bias in the record for Grace being unvaccinated. And I'll point out two other biases in the record while we're talking about why didn't it come out in trial. So the two other noticeable biases were that Grace was deaf. You heard that in the trial. And of course, Grace was not deaf. What happens in medical records, if a doctor puts a note in a record, it tends to carry forward. And this was not just with, the first day, October 6th, Dr. Beck put in the records that Grace had conductive hearing loss. And you see this all the way through the records. Even the last day on October 13th, there was a record from the nurse that Grace had conductive hearing loss. The most dramatic bias to me outside of unvaccinated Christian was that every time you review these records, you heard at trial that I reviewed the records at least 10 times. And, these guys, they were so funny. Once they realized that I was faster than doing the computer search, they would call me and say, what page? Anyway, you still pick up things at the last minute. So the last time I reviewed the records on page 1065, I was looking at why didn't they remove our old home phone number? Because they're trying to get a hold of us after I was kicked out of the hospital. And I asked them, remove this number. And even in the records printed 5 months after Grace's death, the home phone number was still in there. So I was looking at that particular record, and then I saw the Whopper that I had not seen 9 times. Answer, N. No. She was not a VIP in that hospital. Bias. Okay, so now why wasn't that at trial? And I'll just go first, and then I'm just going to tell you from a layman's terms. I've spent a lot for these guys to teach me a little bit about this crazy system, but from the legal perspective, we had to simplify the case. And so we wanted the case to be about the overdose and the illegal DNR. You have to make it simple for the jury. So we did not bring in everything but the kitchen sink. In fact, what we attempted to do, and the conspiracy, my conspiracy things into the case, the judge overruled us, and that's why they were able to ask me questions about my research post Grace's death. We did not want that in the trial because we didn't want the jury to focus on that. We wanted them to focus on the overdoses and the illegal DNR.
Yeah, it's definitely the case that the defense, one of its tactics was to use our differences as a people against us. So they wanted to use the politics. They wanted to use the research that Scott had done. They wanted to use this whole idea of a pandemic against Scott in the trial. And we know, I think, that there is still a minority of this country that understands what's really happening at the federal level, even the international level at this point, where healthcare is being used as our Achilles heel as citizens to take our rights away, whether it's a mandate for a vaccination, whether it's end of life care, whatever it is. They're taking our rights away. They are not at this point looking out for the good of the patient leave, especially elderly patients, especially disabled patients. There's horrific treatment happening in the care homes and in the hospitals right now. So the medical record itself is Mary Beach from Johns Hopkins to come in, and she's supposed to be an ethicist. And one thing that she found that they did that was unethical, not one thing. And you know, one of the things that she's written about, and I read her articles, is she's written about discrimination that occurs against patients because of items that are placed in the hospital record. Well, you know, everything she wrote about applied. Everything she theoretically thought about when it came to, you know, applying it to this particular case, she didn't seem to make the connection between her thoughts ethically and the real world where it was actually happening. And one of the things was just when words go into the documents, they have an effect. And an example, she said, if you have a patient that's questioning, sometimes they're put in as difficult. Well, that's Scott. I can tell you he questioned me for the last 2 years. He certainly questioned the doctors and nurses who were taking care of his baby, his daughter, and he had every right to. And it's interesting in the testimony, so that got in the record that he was difficult. But if you actually asked the nurses, and we did, most of them didn't have a difficulty. There was one nurse that put that he was difficult in the record. But that colors everything. It colors everything that happens subsequent to that. The other thing, and we've seen this in many, many other cases, unvaxxed on page after page. So apparently if you're unvaxxed, which I think we all know that was not really a good program at this point, the mass vaccination program with an experimental, you know, modified RNA drug that nobody had good data for. Anyway, that has become a discrimination in the system. Before. So the government through, and that's the other thing I really want to talk about, the government through the Medicare and Medicaid system is who's mandating these protocols, because if you don't go along, you don't get your money. And that's what's taken over our healthcare system right now. It's really a monster. And again, like I said, I'm proud to have been brought in to try to fight this monster.
Okay, next question. Go ahead. Grace was the best thing God gave us second to salvation. She was a gift from the day she was born. At the beginning, when you have a child with a disability, I mean, you really don't know what to expect. Cindy had more of a knowledge of what to expect because had classes and was trained in special ed. I had no training. I'm just a dad, right? But we accepted what God gave us. So the first while Grace was, you know, our child, I thought about Grace from the perspective, she's never going to be able to get married. All these negatives. Praise God that he blinded us to that perspective. As I got to know her, I realized that I wish I had Down syndrome. The reason is because she viewed the world the way we're supposed to view it, not with all these crazy stresses and all these worries that we think about. God did not make us that way. And Grace was the closest person I have ever seen in God's image. And on top of that, she adopted my stupid sense of humor. I mean, she was a laugh a minute. I mean, who gets to have that? You know, she was childlike. You know, every day was a new adventure. Again, praise God, we were able to do some things that other families can't do. So we ended up being able to kind of lead our family. When our son lost his life to suicide, Grace was the one who held our family together. It wasn't me. It was her. So I hope I answered your question. Thank you. Just so everybody hears the question, he said, what was the reaction to the judge dismissing the battery charge against Nurse McGinnis?
Well, I mean, our reaction, I mean, obviously we fought hard. We put a 17-page brief on battery. That's part of what Attorney Andy Barnhart did, and we had an attorney basically assigned to that issue for 2 weeks. Disappointment, but that issue has not been fought much, and I've got to say that Andy Barnhart did a great job on that. And, the argument is there in the court for anyone to pick up on, for any to use in any of their cases when there's unconsented medical treatment. Unconsented. If you don't know about the treatment you're getting and you get it, that's unconsented. So there's unconsented medical treatment in this case. And I got to tell you, consented medical treatment going on all over this country, and it's killing some people. So it's going to be an ongoing fight, and argument we've had here will help inform other attorneys how to successfully bring a battery claim. So we're laying groundwork right now. It's not that we lost the ruling, but I think the arguments we made were important. Just having that time to think about it and to argue. People don't know. They got to hear from a lot of arguments that you normally would in the courtroom. So I'm very pleased that we've gotten the issue of battery out there. I'll be filing another battery case today.
One of the reasons that Grace blossomed is we homeschooled her. And when I say we, I don't mean me. Cindy did a fantastic job homeschooling Grace. I mean, she could read and write. I mean, that's near impossible for somebody with Down syndrome, but Cindy did it. It was great. Then I just want to say, hearing the final close, the judge said to me, he looked at me, he said, the world was a better place when Grace was in it. All right, next question. So the question is, there's a lot to learn from the story. So I'm going to answer. Hope people realize you've got to take personal responsibility for your health. Do not trust the system. The system is designed not for you, it's designed for them. And if you don't see that, I hope you see it before it's too late. Way more importantly than that, the only one who can defeat the system is our Lord and Savior, Jesus, still in charge. Satan is underneath God. So even though it seems like Satan's got the win right now, Satan is under God. In the end, we know that, and that's the main message I want people to take from this. Great question. Thank you. Serena. Yeah, I'm gonna have that question. Why wasn't, and the testimony from Dr. Burdine, I thought was the best regarding that, because he testified that these three meds have a synergistic effect. And we know from his testimony that this was the most egregious of case he's ever taken to trial. The way I understand testimony, so this is all new stuff to me. And again, I'm going to have Warner comment on this, but it's new to me that, in a jury, you've got to get testimony, and the testimony has to come from somebody credible. So an expert. So I'm not an expert. So yes, of course, I think there's lots of things that should have been said. However, it's got to come in for any Mendenhall comment further.
Well, like you said, he has paid us to learn quite a bit. I think that answer suffices. I mean, we did need that expert to testify as to the synergistic effect of these drugs, and they did work synergistically. I want to point out one thing described is they are day-to-day drugs, and it's weird to me that they were treating Grace towards something. Was she relaxed? Not whether she was getting better. So we heard for all week long about the RAS score and whether she was relaxed or sedated enough, instead of what needed to happen with anything going on in her body. So I don't know, very, very disappointing testimony, but Scott's got this, you guys.
It was asked Schokar. And the reason is because the rules of evidence prohibit us from asking Dr. Schokar his opinion on anything. So we couldn't even ask the question to him, to Dr. Schokar, about what he thought of it in terms of his opinion. The rules of evidence, I think I know them in Wisconsin. The rules of evidence prohibit us from asking.
Can you explain to us DNRs? As I look at state law, it seems to be very clear on what has to take place for a DNR to be placed on a patient, none of which happened in this case. And then it also states that a verbal from anybody or from the patient, or in this case you guys, would have rescinded that DNR. Can you explain to us who may face hospitalization how this happened?
Yeah, great question. So Scott's question is, can you explain the DNR law to us? How could this possibly happen? So I'm going to do my best effort. So when I discovered the DNR in the record, first of all, we discovered the DNR at about 7:18 p.m., 9 minutes before Grace died, when they hollered back, "She's DNR." It's like, what? She's not DNR. Okay, so if you zoom out to the 30,000 foot level, how could this happen? Well, it can happen because they can. This is common. When I first saw the DNR in the record, I thought, well, Grace is a one of. Then people, as I've been speaking out, people are emailing from all over the country that this happened in my loved one's records too. This is common. So how does it happen? They can. So we live in this box that we've all been programmed to believe that we're going to all follow the rules, right? Then that's what we believe, right? The rules of engagement. We may have disagreement. We're all going to follow the rules. That's a fallacy. They don't have to follow the rules. Why? Because they know we can't sue them. They can do whatever they want. Okay, so what is the law? It's interesting. I studied the DNRs for about 200 hours after I discovered this, and saw there's two perspectives of the law. And so it's still not sorted out yet. But the perspective of the law that I believe the law says is that for a DNR to happen, it must be signed, there must be a bracelet. It can be revoked at any time. It's right in State Statute 154. You can read it yourself. The other view of the law is that only applies in the instance where you want to put a DNR on yourself. Those are the two perspectives, okay? It's not for me to play judge, but just think about it. Just think about it logically, right? It can't be that a doctor by himself, unilaterally, without a witness, without a signature, can put a DNR on somebody. But they had their experts testify that that's all fine. Doctors are above God. So they can, they have pure motives. They can do whatever they want. And that's what we heard at trial, and that's what the jury decided. So this should scare everybody who has ears to hear. And we also heard that you don't get access to your medical records till you're out of the hospital. If you end up in a hospital, any of you, you've got to have an advocate. Now, of course, you've got to have a power of attorney, you've got to have medical directives, but don't rely on those documents. Get online access to your chart the instant you get into that hospital, and make sure your advocate is watching that online chart constantly, because they are doing this in real time right now. COVID opened up my eyes to it, but this is literally happening today. So did I answer your question, Scott? Okay. Go ahead, Gary. Yeah, so Gary's question is, okay, let's just assume that we did agree to a DNR and it was valid. The law specifically says that it can be revoked orally at any time by the patient or their advocate. Period. End of story. No question. But then you heard the testimony at trial. Well, the nurses couldn't do anything unless they got the doctor to order the removal. You got to be kidding me. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. So then why didn't you get the doctor's approval to remove it? It's painfully the first day she entered that hospital, and she was going to not get out of that hospital. And it's because I've studied this. This has nothing to do with grace anymore. At first it's all about grace, but this has nothing to do with grace anymore. When you start researching and you connect the dots and you can see it, you heard at trial when I was starting to go through, they want to open up this, that I'm a crackpot with my research, but then when I start quoting out of journals, you hear all the objections. Objection, right? Well, yeah, because they don't want that into the public of genetic medicine that was done during COVID, 1.7 million patients during COVID. So these are all COVID patients. The odds of somebody with Down syndrome having a DNR on them compared to somebody without Down syndrome was 630% more. So wrap your head around that statistic. What's the reason? Down syndrome, look this up yourself. Nice. Once you see it, it legalized euthanasia in our country. That's the fact. Okay, I'm going to just go back with Gary yet for a follow-up. Hold on, Cindy's got. Yeah, Cindy said this is right. I mean, Down syndrome people are the most community members of society, but not in their system. Okay, Gary, you have a follow-up? Well, fantastic, Gary. So Gary is saying this sounds a lot like Nazi Germany. Interestingly, that when I started studying this in July of 22, my eyes really got open because this is worse. So how Nazi Germany was pulled off was Hannah Arendt studied how did this even happen? And she came up with the phrase banality of evil. So banality means common. So evil is so common we don't recognize it. So we've been programmed over decades, hundreds of years, that the Hippocratic Oath, for example, is first do no harm. Read it. It's not first do no harm. It's first an oath to satanic gods. Read this stuff for yourself. You can't unsee it. This is how we've been programmed. So all of a sudden, all of us who have medical insurance, all of us who trust the doctor, it's part of the banality of evil because we've lost our senses. We've lost our critical thinking. That's the banality of evil. Does that answer your question, Gary? Okay. Gary, I can't, you got to wait for the truck. I heard the useless eater part, but then after that, great. The principle is, so Gary's saying it's the principle of the useless eaters that we heard in Nazi Germany. This has been going on way before Nazi Germany, folks. The eugenics policies, the United States invented those in the early 1900s, the whole concept of eugenics. It's on steroids today. So the excuse they're using is we have to have a balanced budget. The elderly and disabled on Medicare and Medicaid right now account for $5 trillion a year, over 50% of the annual federal budget. And since we've got to balance a budget, we have to ration care. Ration care means hasten death. That's what's happening right now. Okay, Serena, I'm gonna go to Matt first because his question, go ahead. Okay, so Matt wants to know about standards of care. Okay, so this is the time if you want to recharge your coffee because you're going to get a lecture. Okay. All right, so standards of care came about in the early 80s from a legal perspective. So standards of care mean, you heard it at trial. There's two versions of standard of care. The one that you heard at trial is what would a reasonable doctor do in the same situation, right? Okay, so translation, what would a doctor who's been programmed by the system do in the same situation? So then they bring in experts to testify that they're perfect, right? And then the jury's supposed to hear the experts. That's why this system is crazy. Okay, so the standards of care in that situation are variable, right? So what would a reasonable doctor do? So then nobody will ever be held to account because are their friends ever going to testify against them? You heard me explain during the trial that the medical examining board, if you file a complaint against the doctor, it goes to the medical examining board. It's called the Department of Safety and Professional Services in Wisconsin. That medical examining board is made up of 10 doctors and 3 lay people appointed by the governor. So of course they send anything wrong. That's why to find somebody like Dr. Burdine is truly an anomaly. It was fantastic to get somebody who was willing to testify against his own and get this out into the public. So then standards of care from a little bit different perspective. There's some standards of care that are fixed. So those are the variable standards of care. So all of you heard of the C word, cancer, right? So then everybody knows what the standard of care for cancer is, right? Radiation, cutting, chemotherapy. If the doctor does not recommend, the doctor recommends the standard of care for chemo. He does not tell you the truth relative to chemo. The doctor will never tell you the statistics related to chemo. You can look this up yourself. Chemo has a 97.9% kill rate. For cancer has been cured. I've did a couple of podcasts on that. Look up Deprogramming with Grace's Dad. Go back. You'll see I had experts testify on my podcast about the cures for cancer. There's literally hundreds of cures for cancer, but they're all covered up by the mainstream media. So you're never going to hear this from the media. You're never going to hear it from your doctors. Then Joe mentioned on the DSPS, Department of Safety and Professional Services, you heard all kinds of objections with that. In fact, it never got into evidence. What's the reason? Because the doctor and the nurse, Dr. Schara and Nurse McGinnis, both had to file responses to the DSPS complaints that were filed against them. And those letters had all kinds of evidence that we wanted to get in that trial, but the judge ruled against us. Okay, Serena. Okay, Serena's question is, are the nurses under the Good Samaritan law? And does that still exist? So Attorney Mendenhall is going to comment on that. He's chomping at the bit.
No, listen, you guys, I literally have another battery case that I've got to file today. We're at the statute of limitations. So I'm going to have to myself, Scott, to get this thing done, because it's on a time day. It's still going on. And all right, Cindy's asking me to share a little bit about the case. It's very simple. A young family went in to have a baby. They asked for their baby not to be vaccinated. The baby got vaccinated despite it being in the record that they didn't want the vaccination. A few days later, that baby was dead with a cerebral hemorrhage. So we're going to go in and take what we've learned in the battery and try to hold the doctors in that hospital system accountable for not listening to the patient, for not listening to the parent. Families that this happens to is just horrific. So I literally have hours left to get this filed. So I want to get in there and get to work on it. Anyway, thank you.
Joe, do you want to comment on Good Samaritan? Okay, no comments on Good Samaritan, I guess. That's correct. Okay, all right. So I'm going to try to summarize your question and then answer it. So the metabolic acidosis. And the answer to that is family was there. Jessica was there. The hospital system, specifically Dr. Schara and Nurse McGinnis, caused the metabolic acidosis, but then supposedly didn't recognize it. So Jessica was there. It never needed to get to that point is really the take-home message. And you remember when during my testimony date, the first day I testified, when I told the jury, I looked them in the eye and just said, you know, sometimes you are called to say something on the stand that, you know, is not scripted. And what I told them is, if you're ever in the situation that I was in, take your loved one home with you. So your best defense is never going to the hospital. That is by far and away your best defense. If you need to go in the hospital objectively, make sure you have an advocate that is willing to get you out of there at any time. Realize there's a couple other things in play. There's CPS, Child Protective Services, and Adult Protective Services. So if you start getting outside of their parameters, they can call in the to go against you. So I mean, it's a very corrupt system, folks. All right, go ahead. Oh, hold on. Oh yes, having babies at home. I'm all for having more babies. We're thinking about having another one. Okay. Okay. Hey, go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, why did the judge allow the defense to have me speak about my views on COVID, but not allow me to speak about financial incentives? Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so Joe's going to obviously correct what I'm going to say wrong here, okay, because he's already knows I'm going to screw it up. He's ready to go. All right, so my belief regarding that is there's a process that we went through on May 19th and 20th, way before the trial, a couple weeks before the trial, and there was a number of motions, and the motions that were filed were called motions in limine. So we really expected the judge to go in line with our motion in limine. That means what evidence are we not going to allow good things, because it has nothing to do with the trial. We're talking about Grace's death. The judge disallowed that. I can't answer those questions. Of course, they want to limit answers, right? And when I'm on the stand, I've got to limit my answers to some extent. I got away with a few things, but once the jury asked me questions, you saw what I was able to get in. Because then I don't have any restriction. So I was able to explain how ventilators were incentivized. Were incentivized by the government during COVID. So I was able to get all that in, not because the defense asked, but because the jury asked. Okay, Joe, fix my errors.
So I don't have a lot to say when I don't have a lot to say, which is there's a 45-day period or 90-day period, depending on the circumstances, after a jury verdict comes in for further consideration of legal issues and legal decisions that were made pre-trial and at the trial. And so a lot of the questions that are being asked today about the DNR order or about what the law is or what the law should be are still open questions. And so I'm not going to have anything to say on those.
Other than what he just said. Okay, go ahead. So the question is, we had a version on the witness stand, the defense had a version on the witness stand, and do witnesses outright lie? And having been through this now, I sat through depositions, sitting through the entire trial. The answer to that question is yes, witnesses lie. This rule box that we all, the most blatant and simple, it's not blatant, but it's a simple example. I mentioned Dr. Beck earlier. He wasn't in the case because of proximate cause, but Dr. Beck, his first report on Grace, in that report, he said that he sat down with me, that Grace was on a BiPAP, complete lies. Then when he was in his deposition, he said, well, when he sat down with me, I talked about how Grace golfed. I never met the man till deposition. And if he would have just looked at Grace, he would have saw she's on a regular cannula, but he reported in his record she's on BiPAP. So yeah, they lie. And unfortunately, the records become prima facie evidence. Praise God, Jessica and I were there, and we transcribed our notes from inside the room shortly thereafter. We would not have a trial. An emergency use authorization, drug or modality. So tocilizumab that was offered, and ventilators. If she would have died with either one of those two, we would have not had a trial. So praise God, he was navigating this way back to have us wake up to these things live while Grace was in the room. That's why we have a trial, or that's why we did have a trial. Does that answer your question? Okay. That was the most ridiculous lie on the stand. I mean, it's just like she's whole, that was insanity. I could hardly believe listening to that. But I mean, you got to sit there and listen. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to answer something. Oh, I forgot to say the question. Too late. All right, go ahead. Oh, yep.
I just want to add something on this topic we're on. And Joe here, since I have the mic, I need to say a huge thank you to him. He ultimately got me through my time on the stand. And of course, God, he's the one that truly got me through it all, but Joe here walked me through it. As you can imagine, I was there. There's a lot of details in my head. I had a lot of emotional days as I processed what I wasn't going to be able to talk about, because the entire story of my sister was important to me. And I had to trust Joe. I wasn't able to watch the trial, so what was being said. And I told him, I said, you need to help me. You need to pull what you need out of my head, because everything was important to me. And he did that. And I want him to be recognized for that, because I don't think I could have done it without him guiding me through it. And of course, I thank God as well. I look back and I can't even believe that happened and I made it through. So thank you, God, and thank you, Joe.
All right, let's take a couple more questions. Okay, go ahead.
Some people who were attending the trial, they allegedly observed jurors sleeping and seemingly disinterested. What are your thoughts on those observations? Do you think it affected the outcome of the decision?
Well, we thought it was in our favor because the judge was calling out attorney Jason Frankowiak for putting him to sleep. So we thought it was in our favor. I mean, I was sleeping too. So, I mean, he didn't catch me, thankfully. But, I mean, yeah, so obviously it didn't impact the jury. We had one person dissent, which is 8%, right? 1 out of 12 is 8%. That's probably represent at least part of what's going on. So the results shouldn't surprise any of us here. I mean, anybody watched the trial would see. I mean, we had an overabundance of evidence. As Mike Administrator said, we only had to have one feather, but we had an overabundance of evidence. Okay, so what and so lifetime gets us into that confirmation bias, and it's tough to break out of it. But I encourage anybody that is listening, take some time, look up these things I'm talking about, and be open to that. Okay, is this possible? What we're talking about is actually happening, and then you'll start waking up. Okay, go ahead.
In today's educational system, in my opinion, people are programmed to hear the word conspiracy theory and automatically say, oh my goodness, total nutcase. And to bring that out at the trial, the media also was talking about conspiracy theories were raised in the hearing. To bring that out, let that be part of the discussion. Your personal beliefs, views, attitudes, and anything be relevant to what they did to Grace. This seems outrageous. Has that been considered as a possible program yourself a mistrial or a reconsideration of some kind? Because that seems brutally unfair. And they even made little jabs at you in the closing remarks about the pandemic. Again, this is the dog whistle. We're dealing with families here. That's really brutal.
So the question is there any opportunity for mistrial, appeal, whatever, because of the the conspiracy things coming in? That's a label that they put on people like me. But once you research it, you realize it's not a conspiracy. So I'm not offended by the label. It's fine.
But conspiracy theory that get you banned 2 years ago. Now it's officially recognized by the government. Oh yeah, originated in the Wuhan laboratory.
Correct. Yeah. So is that a basis? I mean, the legal team is going to have to decide that, and then ultimately I would have to decide if we're going to follow that path. We did what we do, and so I don't see that as something we will do. But I mean, we did what we were called to do. We left it all on the battlefield. I don't want to keep participating in this legal system. This is not a system that's designed to win in. That's not the goal here. It was designed to use as a platform so that we could share a message, and for those with ears to hear, have them wake up because of Grace's death. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and related question. One of these conspiracy theories is that there were financial incentives to treat people with COVID or to find things with COVID related or to intubate, etc. And many doctors don't even seem to recognize that. Would you comment on the financial incentives for what happened to Grace?
Yeah, fantastic question. So he wants my comments on the financial incentives. Yeah, the doctors, it seems like they're completely blind to it. There's many doctors that are awake to it. So you go into the hospital, if they test you with COVID. So this was during the COVID era. There's a $13,000 financial incentive by the government. If you were put on a ventilator for more than 96, $39,000 financial incentive by the government. The average stay in a hospital when somebody's put on a ventilator before they died on the ventilator is 22 days. So that incentive compounded with the hospital stay to about $300,000. On Grace's death certificate, because it was listed as acute respiratory failure and as a result of COVID-19 pneumonia, that was a $21,000 financial incentive. Then to add fuel to the fire, you can't even, it's like, how is this even possible? But the government, who is COVID, then says to the family who lost their loved one, since your loved one died of COVID, we'll write you a $9,500 check for your burial expenses. I was researching at this time, I was really into it right after Grace died to what's going on. And when Cindy got incentive, she instantly said Grace was worth more dead than alive. And so we never took the $9,500 because we would have been agreeing with that whole process. So we never took it. So does that answer your question? All right. We'll go with one more. All right. Hearing none, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. God bless you all. Hold the phone. We got my beautiful wife and lovely daughter want to say a couple words in closing.
Just in closing, one of the questions that one of the reporters asked was, how do we remember Grace, and how do we want people to, or how would we see her, or how did we see her? I think is how we actually worded it. And Grace was love, she was joy, and our lives are very empty without her here with us. She just lit up a room. She lit up other people's lives with a smile and her words to everybody. She always was very attentive. One of the things I remember most was we have a chiropractor. He's in the audience today, Dr. Vervoort, and she would come in, and if she noticed Dr. Vervoort had a purple shirt on or a pink shirt, she would compliment him, or if he had a beard that day, or she just would make sure that she saw you and she recognized you, and she made you feel like you were real and that you were an important person. And that part I think I'm going to miss the most, because of the fact that she just always, always saw you. And what's sad is that people don't see them. People with special needs are shunned. they're not looked at, they're not appreciated, they're not respected, and they are such a gift, and they deserve our respect. And that's what I think the world is going to miss the most about Grace. And Dr. Revord has something to say out there. Her flippy's hat. Repeat him. Repeat if need be. Thank you for that. That is very true. She did. She brought that happiness to people's lives. And as he mentioned that, her flippy's hat, when we would go around selling Girl Scout cookies, it was just, she'd use that and she'd pump the tail, and it was her way of saying thank you for your order. And it was just precious. It was just, that was who she was. She brought that happiness and that joy to everybody. And as he stated, you know, most of his days would be mundane, but then when he would see Miss Grace, it was just like a breath of fresh air. And that was her. That really was her. And we are, like I said, truly, truly lost without her. And the world is not as joyful without her. And our lives are very empty. But we know that we will see her again, as I stated earlier.
She called her beautiful big sister, and she told me that God is inside me. She had a long name for our brother, but to shorten it up was Travis Chickabutt Butt Cheeks. To speak on people with Down syndrome, there's just a love that they bring. There was a sweet girl yesterday that came to the courthouse that we became friends, and her name is Gracie. She also has Down syndrome. And throughout listening to yesterday's trial, she's grabbing my hand and holding my hand. And it was the sweetest thing. They have this love about them, and they just want to be respected and included. If you guys could give them the chance, know that they would appreciate that. So that's one thing I just wanted to add. And of course, we just miss Grace and our brother so much. My brother, their son. And it's hard to continue on without them. But we carry them, and we'll continue to carry them for the rest of our lives here on earth until we're called home and we can join them. Listen, Grace.
Cindy's going to walk around. Cindy's going to walk around bracelets and stickers for you. So take one before you leave, please. It's not on. They should.
It just says that they messed with the wrong girl, which they did. So if you want to buy them, put on your car, or on your front door.
Well, that was pretty emotional, and I think that about wraps up this case for now. Based on what I hear here, is that there likely isn't going to be an appeal. At this point in time, that doesn't look like the father is interested in pursuing an appeal. I don't know what may happen or what may change in the coming days, weeks, months, what that process might look like. I'm sure Barnes will keep us apprised of that. In the next few minutes, I will be starting a new stream with the day one, with the opening statements from Warner Mendenhall. And just as we can document it and everybody can get a chance to see the original testimony from Cindy, Grace's mother, and those opening statements. I appreciate everybody, and see you guys again in just a few minutes.